What would you do if you discovered one of your employees was a predator, but the victim refused to press charges, allowing him to get away with it? In today's story, the protagonist's choice is a masterclass in how to handle it. To give you some context, I live and work in a country that relies heavily on a foreign and expat workforce across almost every industry. For anyone to move here for a job, they have to be sponsored by a company or their direct employer. I happen to be one of those employers. I own a small restaurant and have more than a handful of foreign nationals on my payroll as servers, kitchen staff, drivers, and so on. So, the story begins on a lazy weekend. I was relaxing on my couch when my phone rang. It was a call informing me that one of our sponsored employees, a server we'll call Clara, had been picked up by the police, essentially for indecent exposure. The short version is that she was caught getting intimate with a guy in a private booth at a local restaurant. The police had walked in on them while they were in the middle of some very heavy petting. They were both fully clothed, but the man she was with, or more accurately, on top of, had his junk out. As it turned out, he worked at a restaurant just 2 doors down from mine. After a stern lecture and threats of deportation to scare them straight, the police let them go. They had to sign a document promising never to repeat the offense. But it was basically a slap on the wrist. Everyone went home. But for me, something didn't add up. Later that night, a thought kept nagging at me: how and why did the police find them in a private booth in the back of a restaurant before the restaurant's own staff did? The next day, I called the manager of that restaurant. I figured maybe they had called the police immediately. Or perhaps the couple had gotten aggressive when asked to stop. But the manager told me his staff hadn't noticed a thing. In fact, he said the police had never been to his establishment before. When they arrived, they didn't ask any questions. They just walked straight to the back booths and busted them. This meant only one thing: someone must have seen them and called the cops directly. The question was, who? I decided it was time to talk to Clara. I needed to check on her, get her side of the story, give her the standard you did something stupid employer chat. And, most importantly, reassure her that her job was safe. When I asked who she thought might have called the police on her, she didn't hesitate for a second. It had to be Farid, she said. Farid was one of our drivers. Why him? I asked. He's the one who dropped me off there, she explained. He might have seen my friend walk in after me and called the police on us. I knew he had dropped her off. That was his job and her only way to get around for free. That seems a bit extreme, I said. Why would he do that? She told me it was because he was jealous. Apparently, he was obsessed with her and had been constantly trying to get her into bed. Then came the part that made my blood boil. She told me that he had actually tried to force himself on her once. She had fought him off, and he hadn't tried anything since, though he remained very short and curt with her. Why on earth didn't you tell me or a manager immediately? I demanded. She said she had handled it her way, and since it stopped, she didn't want to get anyone fired or have any interaction with the authorities. I advised her to press formal charges against him, but she flat out refused. Her refusal infuriated me. This guy was going to get away with it, completely scot-free. In my mind, firing Farid was a given. But it just wasn't enough. For someone to attempt what was basically rape and face no consequences? That was not okay with me. But with her refusing to act, it seemed my hands were tied. My next conversation was, of course, with Farid. I called him into my office, intending to confront him with Clara's accusations. I wasn't sure how to begin. So I started with, obviously you've heard about what happened to Clara this weekend? He walked right into the trap. Heard about it? He replied, a proud, beaming smile spreading across his face. I called it in. He beamed with pride, utterly clueless that in trying to right a perceived wrong, he had just handed me the shovel to bury his own future. As one person later commented, it's amazing how people, in all their arrogance, try to weasel their way out of trouble, only to end up in even deeper water because of their own behavior. And this is where the satisfaction began to build. You see, Farid often paraded pictures of his beautiful young wife, who was living back home with his mother. He was so proud of her looks. He also claimed to be a devoutly religious man. And why did you call the police? I asked, keeping my voice level. He puffed out his chest. After I dropped her off, I waited to see who she was meeting because she's a troublemaker woman. When I saw the man walk in after her, I called the police because I know him. And he is married. This is against the laws of God and man. A slow smile spread across my face. I had him. And why do that instead of calling your manager? Or me? Why not see what they were actually doing before making it my problem and the company's problem? Silence. He dropped his head and started intently studying his shoes. Farid. I know why, I said, my voice turning to ice. I know what you did. Clara just told me everything. I'm disgusted by you. And I'm sorry we ever hired you. He had the absolute audacity to mumble, without looking up. I only tried once, sir. And there it was. His greatest flaw wasn't just his hypocrisy, but his staggering stupidity, born from an arrogance so profound he couldn't see the trap he'd just walked into. I almost slapped him right there. A thought shot through my mind, echoing a sentiment I'd see online later. I only tried once, sir. And that's why I'm only firing you once. I fired him on the spot. I handed him a one-way ticket home for a flight that was leaving in 4 hours and told him to get out of my office and out of my sight. But that wasn't the end. This is where I got my revenge. I remembered that his home phone number was on the CV he submitted when we first hired him. I knew it was his house number because I had called it to set up his initial interview. I waited until I knew his flight had taken off. Then I dialed. I was hoping his wife would answer. Not his mother. I got my wish. Hello, Mrs. Farid. My name is your husband's employer. Well, his former employer, I should say. I'm calling to inform you that I fired him a few hours ago. And he is on a flight home as we speak. His flight number is XXXXX. And he will be arriving at XXXX. Just so you are aware. I was forced to fire him because he attempted to rape a fellow employee half his age. I'm sorry. I said my piece and promptly hung up. But not before I heard her sharp, horrified gasp on the other end of the line. In the end, this story serves as a powerful reminder that the most self-righteous individuals are often hiding the most sinister secrets. And their own hypocrisy will inevitably become the architect of their downfall. The victim in this story didn't want to involve the authorities. So I took justice into my own hands. Was I right to make that final phone call? Or did I overstep my bounds? What would you have done?